Hello and welcome back to another episode of Wide Awake Politics. It is Thursday, January 16th, 2025. That's 2 days in a row with Wide Awake Politics. How exciting is that? No, we, like I said, yesterday's show, we're going to try to do some smaller episodes, especially with the confirmation hearings coming out, a lot of different things happening. So we are going to have this episode kind of do the same format and everything as the last episode with the confirmation hearing of Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense. This is for Pam Bondi. This is for Attorney General of the United States of America. We're, again, going to try to take that same format. What do we agree with? What do we want to work together on? What are we concerned with? And how do we kind of move forward? So starting off with, what does the Attorney General do, right? So the Attorney General was created by the Judiciary Act of 1789. We've talked about this before. They're the head of the Department of Justice. They're the chief law enforcement officer of the United States. They represent the U.S. in legal matters, and they give advice and opinions to the president and heads of the executive department, basically telling them, like, you can't do that. That's illegal. Probably shouldn't do that. Maybe you should look at this, like, this is what I think about, things like, I don't know, the Fourth Amendment that they talk about a lot throughout this hearing. So, biggest difference between Pete Hegseth's hearing and Pam Bondi's hearing that you'll see is Pam Bondi is without a doubt qualified for the job. She's qualified. She was the Attorney General for the state of Florida, like the third biggest state when it comes to like people and everything else. So she understands the departments, how that works, understands how to run a massive department. Obviously it's a step up, but that's what you're looking for. And something that you did not see with Pete Hegseth among, all the other problems that you have is that he was uniquely unqualified for the position. And again, I'm going to say something here, and you may not agree with me, but I saw it on one of the social medias yesterday, and it kind of stuck with me is the fact that, you look at Pam Bondi and she's completely qualified for the job. There are some questions that we have about her. So we're going to hold confirmation hearing that is 2 days long with, multiple rounds of questions, allow the senators to do their job with the advice and consent of the Constitution. And you have Pete Hegseth, who talks about DEI and woke and all this. Doesn't even take the oath to be under oath during the questioning. The committee only allows one round of questions, 7 minutes for, each senator, to include senators from the Democratic Party who did not even get a chance to meet with him beforehand. But he's the one complaining about DEI and, us lowering standards when we're literally lowering standards to allow Pete Hegseth to be the Secretary of Defense. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about Pam Bondi's differences between the hearings that you'll see for, I guess, procedurally wise, is this is a perfect example of the committees have different rules. So with Pam Bondi's, again, she's going into her second day of questioning. Yesterday, they opened Chief Chuck Grassley, Senator Grassley, is the chairman of the committee. He was talking about how they're going to allow for 2 rounds of questioning, 7 minutes first round, 5 minutes second round. Any follow-up questions, they'll take on a case-by-case basis, which is, pretty much the norm. Now, going back to yesterday, Mr. Hegseth's hearing, they said they were only going to allow for 1 round of questions, 7 minutes, and that they were doing that based off precedent of the last 2 major nomination hearings. And whenever I just want to point out that, yes, that's the precedent that was set by those 2. But again, you're talking about the nominations of previous, a 4-star general into that role of Secretary of Defense, and Lloyd Austin, who's the current one. I don't agree on Lloyd Austin on a couple different things, but again, completely qualified for the job. Wasn't a whole lot of questions to ask. And then before that, with the Trump administration, you had General Mad Dog Mattis. Again, bipartisan support there. There wasn't a whole lot of questions people had for him, even on the Democratic side. So when you do have a qualified candidate, those things can go through faster. Now, Pam Bondi is a qualified candidate. It is taking a lot more time because there are a lot of questions, especially coming into this administration. I think anybody would admit to saying that there are a lot of questions yet to be answered, a lot of trying to draw like, hey, is this going to be run similar to the first administration? And what would you do differently than the first administration's people, that kind of thing. And I think that's fair, but we're not getting a lot of answers from these nominees on that, because a lot of them are taking the line as, I'm not going to speak for hypotheticals. I reject any notion that the president would ask me to do anything illegal, those kind of things. Those are the answers you're getting to questions about that. So I'm going to, again, start with things that we can agree on, and areas during the hearing I thought were great. I think that they showed actual work being done, compromise, those kind of things. So some of the things that Ms. Bondi said was her priority were gangs, fentanyl, human trafficking. I think that's great, that those are great priorities to have. Is exactly where the priorities for the Justice Department, some of the priorities where they need to be. Human trafficking continues to be a real problem. She was talking about the Democratic senators were really on her case about not registering a conflict of interest with the government of Qatar. And whenever because she was lobbying, right? But it was interesting when she was explaining what that actually entailed. Her firm that she was with was lobbying the government of Qatar because of human trafficking happening because of the World Cup. That was absolutely the case. The World Cup in Qatar was a full of human trafficking, slavery, just massive amounts of just people dying just to try to create stadiums for people. You had so much human trafficking going on from, smaller Asian countries where they'd bring in people that said, hey, I know you're poor here, everything else. We're going to let you come over here, work. We'll provide you with food, all this kind of stuff. And all these people were coming from these poor countries, and they were like, okay, we're going to work, and then we're going to send all this money back. And then as soon as they got there, they took their passport. And then, so they couldn't leave if they wanted to. They weren't paying them. They weren't feeding them. They were dying, and they were getting infections and diseases and dying within their living quarters. Getting sent home in pine boxes, things like, it was terrible what happened just so people could watch soccer, right? Because FIFA is one of the most corrupt organizations in the world. But that's me. But that was one of the things that I was like, why would you? That's what you're gonna go after, her not checking the box on lobbying for the government of Qatar, or Qatar, whichever way you want to pronounce it. You can pronounce it either way, Qatar. I thought that was kind of silly, but especially when there's more pressing things, I think that we have to worry about. Senator Klobuchar asked some really good questions and was talking about and illustrated, the fact that Ms. Bondi took the time prior to these hearings to go to the offices and meet with the Democratic senators, talk with them about her priorities, how they can work together. And that's exactly how this process should go. Again, Mr. Hegseth did not do that with the Democratic senators. Just as far as, taking the job seriously, I think that Ms. Bondi does take the job seriously. I think she would take the job seriously. And I think that she would want to work with, Senator Klobuchar on some of these issues. And Senator Blumenthal, was even complimentary on some of those things. Some of the big things that came out during the hearing that Senator Klobuchar got Ms. Bondi to commit to was defending preventative service under the ACA. Why do I say that that's important? One, because it shows that Ms. Bondi can put her personal beliefs aside. As far as backstory, Ms. Bondi is a lawyer. She had signed on in a lawsuit to try to repeal the Affordable Care Act. She fought and, worked to try to repeal that. Now, as Attorney General for the United States, it is her job to defend the law of the land. So now she's going to be put in a position where she's defending that. She made a point to say that they weren't the same thing, because this is specifically talking, Senator Klobuchar was talking about the fact that there's a lawsuit right now in the Supreme Court where people are taking they're taking issue with the preventative services part of the Affordable Care Act, and they don't think that should be legal. Ms. Bondi's like, no, I got you. Like, we're gonna defend the Affordable Care Act. We're gonna defend the rule of law, right? The law of the land, right? There's another point I want to make about defending the law of the land. So another thing that I thought was super important was she was committed to enforcing the FACE Act. The FACE Act being the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrance Act. Now, the FACE Act is very important. I think a lot of us may remember back in the 90s, there was a lot of bombings of abortion clinics, right? Women's reproductive health clinics, women's health clinics that were labeled abortion clinics. And there was targeting of doctors who were practicing in these clinics, whether they were performing abortions or not. There was bombings, there was targeting, there was all of these things happening. People picketing, outside of clinics and intimidating these people. So the FACE Act came into play, and it continues to get brought up in federal courts. This is what the FACE Act does. It prohibits violent, threatening, damaging, and obstructive conduct intended to injure, intimidate, or interfere with the right to seek, obtain, or provide reproductive health services. That's what people are mad about. They said it goes against their First Amendment rights to be able to go up and yell mean things at people who are trying to get healthcare. When I tell you that, like, these clinics, some people call them abortion clinics. When they see reproductive health services, they automatically just think abortion. When I tell you that these clinics don't just perform abortions, as a matter of fact, that most of them, that's not their number one thing that they even do. They provide reproductive services and free healthcare, or low healthcare cost for people in the community who need things like tampons, that need things like birth control, who need things to prevent an unwanted pregnancy, right? They are providing things like STI checks, to ensure that they are not, going to be passing around any kind of diseases. They are getting treatment for those things to hopefully ensure that whenever it does come time for them to want to have a baby and want to get pregnant, that they have taken all the steps to ensure that they are healthy, right? They're getting pap smears. They're getting their 5 years pap smears for free. That's what these reproductive health services. So when you have people saying, well, my First Amendment says that I can go out there and yell all I want to about it, and you can't do anything about that, or try to intimidate people and do whatever. Let me tell you something. These people that are going into that clinic, you don't know what they're there for. You don't know if they're there for an abortion. You don't know if they're there just because they got raped and they wanted to, make sure that they don't have an STI. You don't know what they're there for. And you're going to shout at them saying that you're going to hell, and you're going to sit there and pass judgment on them. Shame on you. Shame on you. So that's the FACE Act. And Senator Klobuchar ensured that Attorney General Bondi, I say Attorney General Bondi because she was Attorney General of Florida, and then she will be Attorney General of the United States unless something catastrophic happens. She will be the next Attorney General of the United States of America. She committed to enforcing the FACE Act. She did make sure to say that, it wasn't just abortion clinics, which I agree with. I don't know why anybody would not, right? So, that's why we're there for that. A couple other things that I thought were kind of funny here. Lindsey Graham's on this committee. Lindsey Graham made a point to say the Democrats are so mad because Ms. Bondi was one of Trump's personal lawyers. What's so wrong with wanting your attorney general to be close to you? I mean, for God's sakes, we had, Bobby Kennedy as Jack Kennedy's, attorney general. Like, he said that like it wasn't a big deal. Like, people weren't, like, mad about it. And, like, people weren't constantly, like, questioning that relationship between the attorney general and the president and how different that was. I'm not going to say that you can't have a close relationship. I'm saying that the president should not interfere with what's going on in the Justice Department. Now, the problem comes in with Ms. Bondi is not her experience, not what her priorities that are listed. It's her ability to say no to a certain individual, and that would be the president-elect Trump. And they do have more than just her being one of his attorneys during his first impeachment, and more than that, it's just the fact that when she was attorney general and had a election coming up and was, fundraising, Donald Trump at the time, this is years and years prior, this is like 2012, this was before all of the presidential even stuff of 2016, he donated to her campaign. No big deal. However, at the time, Florida was investigating for-profit scamming universities. Universities that were scamming their students out of money, that weren't accredited, that weren't providing any kind of thing back to their students. One of those universities was Trump University. It's proven. But interestingly enough, the Attorney General of Florida did not go after Trump University, went after a bunch of other ones, did not go after Trump University. So that's just, whatever. That's years ago. Just like years ago, when we talk about Ms. Bondi, she called gay marriage a serious public harm. Now, that was in 2014. So hopefully her opinion has changed, considering that Obergefell is the law of the land, making marriage equality across the United States. Now, I say Obergefell and I talk about the gay marriage thing because I do think that there will be challenges very soon to marriage equality in Obergefell. It's happened a couple times, and a couple states have already raised it up. Texas is one of them. Their attorney general salivates at the idea of sending people up to the Capitol to try to get gay marriage returned to the states, so the states can decide if marriage just should be legal between same-sex couples in their state. So Pam Bondi, as the Attorney General of the United States, will be selecting a Solicitor General to argue that case at the Supreme Court. So very exciting stuff there. So hopefully, just like she had said and committed to these other things, she'll commit to the same as, making sure that she and her Justice Department follows the law of the land. Obergefell. Excellent. Awesome. So some of the other things I thought were interesting that we got from the Republican side. Senator Kennedy from Louisiana, I believe, is a fool. He likes to grandstand. He tries to make talking points, and then he gets a lot of people to laugh at him. At him, not with him. But yesterday's big talking point I thought was great. He kept talking about media stars, that attach themselves, and billionaires that attach themselves, and was going to all these important meetings, and they were with meetings with the likes of Bill Clinton and Tony Blair, and he specifically were talking about Sam Bankman-Fried, right? And about, one of them looking like a John Belushi, getting fourth place in a John Belushi, lookalike contest, and just talking about how they're in jail now, right? And how the Justice Department did their job. Getting these billionaires who want to, dress like crap and meet all these world leaders. And, if he didn't say the name Sam Bankman-Fried, I would think, is he talking about Elon? And is he saying, like, if Elon does crimes, that the Department of Justice should go after him? Because that's perfectly, that sounds great. I love that. And, obviously, Pam Bondi agreed with Senator Kennedy. I don't even know where he was going with it, but she agreed, and that's great. Another one was from Senator Lee. He's a Republican. His big thing is the weaponization of the Justice Department. The Justice Department should absolutely never be weaponized. Should never be told, hey, I need you to go look for evidence of fraud and find it. And if you don't, I'm going to fire you. Or, hey, I need you to go investigate this whole thing. And if you don't, I'm going to fire you. Oh, you're recusing yourself? I'm going to fire you. I say those things because those things happen with Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr. with Trump's first two attorney generals. But weaponization of the Justice Department should never happen. So Senator Lee wanted to make sure that he asked, will you ensure to stopping anybody from weaponizing the Justice Department, like incarcerating one's political opponents as a sitting president? And she was like, I will absolutely stop it. Make sure that we do not weaponize the Justice Department. Love that. I think that that's great. I think we want to make sure that that continues to happen. There's a lot of talks about Kash Patel because he's up for FBI director. She ensured to try to dissuade any kind of concerns by saying like, hey, I'm in charge of Kash. He would fall under me. And we're going to ensure that he doesn't, do anything outside the law. That was interesting. One of the things she wanted to ensure over and over again, because a lot of the questions that came from the Democratic side, that was the concern, the chief concern was, will you say no to Trump? And whenever he's asking you to do something that's illegal. And again, her thing was, I would not be in a position, or I would not take this position if I thought he was going to ask me to do something illegal. Again, with Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr, a little bit of a different story. But she was very adamant that politics should not play a part in any of this. And when Democrats started asking her about what she believes about the 2020 election, she refused to say that that President Biden won a free and fair election. She did say repeatedly that President Biden is the president. Like that, I mean, obviously he's the president. But she refused to say that it was a free and fair election. That doesn't take any courage. You refusing to say that over and over and over again and saying that it's politics for you to say the truth is politics within itself. You are refusing to say that just because you're trying to appease one person, that person being the president or the incoming president. So that does not give me any hope that you're going to stand up to him, right? So I just thought that was interesting when we talk about what we're willing to say, what you are and aren't willing to say there. So it comes back down to trust. Are you going to say no to him? I don't know. The weaponization of the Justice Department, will that happen? I can tell you Kash Patel is a terrible pick for FBI director. Look, here at the end of the day, Pam Bondi is going to be the Attorney General again, like I said. But so how do we move forward? By ensuring that what she said today under oath, I do have to bring up one more point. I thought it was interesting. She's under oath and she's talking about all these things and how they're talking about how she was the president's personal lawyer. Through all of this, she went up to Pennsylvania during the 2020 election and saw, massive fraud, right? With no evidence whatsoever that anybody can give, which makes me question her sanity. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. That was rude. That was just me being rude and petty. But in all honesty, but she was the president's personal lawyer. And when asked about some of the things that, and specifically about him calling Georgia and him asking them to find 11,000 so many votes. And that's basically asking them, I need you to find these votes so that way I can take the electoral votes from Georgia and then become president of the United States. That is stealing an election. That is trying to steal an election, right? And when asked about that, she said, I can't comment on that because I haven't heard that conversation. And she said, I haven't heard that hour-long conversation, so I cannot take the quote from him for the find 11,000 so many votes, right? She could not take the senator's word for it because the context was missing from the hour-long conversation. It's an hour-long conversation that happened years ago. I've been the president's lawyer for years and years and years, right? Why wouldn't you have listened to the one of the major pieces of evidence against him, especially if you say that you would not be put in a position to run the Justice Department of in a Donald Trump administration, if you thought that he would do anything illegal or ask you to do something illegal, and you can't even, one, say that he lost a free and fair election, and two, that you can't even admit that you listened to a phone call. And if you didn't, then what are you doing as his personal attorney? Also, like, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. But she'll admit to watching the Netflix series to ensure that, that Sam Bankman-Friedman, or whatever his name was, I can't remember his name, the one that Senator Kennedy was talking about, she did make sure to note that she watched that Netflix series, but she did not listen to the hour-long conversation of her clients, one of his biggest things against it. That doesn't give me very much hope that she's, one, telling the truth. So how can we feel comfortable that she's going to do all these things she committed to when we know that she can't tell the truth? I mean, I know Donald Trump won the 2016 election. I know Joe Biden won the 2020 election. I know Donald Trump won the 2024 election. I can admit to that. It is what it is. Anyway, but that's where we're at on that. And there's another hearing, but she is going to be the Attorney General. Moving forward, we need to ensure that she's sticking to those things that she talked about, like human trafficking, fentanyl, gangs, those kind of things. Those are the one of the things you have to be watching out for, as Lindsey Graham called for, making sure that we have way more detention facilities. And what does that look like? What does that turn into, those detention facilities that they're talking about? What are those going to look like? But we're going to move forward. We're going to figure out ways to ensure that she is staying committed to the rules of law. We're holding this Senate committee accountable as well, right? The senators are the Senate committee that's going to be working with the Attorney General and holding her accountable. So we need to make sure that we're holding them accountable by taking what they said during this hearing too and ensuring that they are, committed, that all the things that they had her commit to, that they are doing the same thing, like not weaponizing the Justice Department, right? All right, so I think that's going to take us for the end of the day today. Couple quick things, though, that happened. There was a ceasefire, right, between Israel and Hamas over Gaza. So that's very exciting. There's been a couple hiccups already today. The biggest problem is trying to stabilize this enough to get the deal to the finish line and then to actually execute it. Problems with these deals is that they always have this phase 2 and 3 that we're not sure about. That happens. Now, this is going to be turned over to the Trump administration to see through. So Marco Rubio's role is going to be very important. We just had Anthony Blinken taking 7-8 months, over a year, to try to get this stuff right, to try to maintain a sense of peace in the Middle East. And Anthony Blinken has done a damn fine job of doing everything he can to hold this together. So he deserves a lot of credit for that, I do believe. The Trump administration is going to try to take all the credit for this. Whatever, get the hostages home, get their bodies home, and try to have some sense of security for the civilians that are there. So that's what we should be concerned about there. Another thing that happened yesterday is President Biden gave his final address to the American people. It was powerful. His speechwriters did a masterful job of the piece on the Statue of Liberty. I mean, come on. It was beautiful to talk about how she was built on the move, stepping on the bondage, stepping over the chains of bondage, moving forward, never backward, and then, built to sway but never fall. Whoa. And then he talks about the concerns that he has moving forward with the tech industrial complex, vice the defense industrial complex. And I thought that was very interesting. It was really good. But the inauguration's coming up. A couple quick things there. People are up in arms because Michelle Obama is not going. I ain't going neither. It's going to be cold. No, be up in arms about Michelle Obama not going. Okay, he's called her every name in the book. Called her husband every name in the book. Oh, by the way, him nor any of his family went to the inauguration of President Joe Biden. So why don't you save it for another day? Also, it's just cold. I don't want to go out there. All right. But have a good rest of your day, whatever day you're watching this on. And big thing this weekend, it's MLK Junior's National Day of Service all weekend long, because MLK Day is on Monday, January 20th. There's also Saturday is March. It's the March March of Our Lives, March for Our Lives. It's basically everybody's marching all around the country. Be careful, do the right thing. I've already committed to volunteering for Day of Service, so I'm gonna be doing that. But do good. Don't do anything bad. Do good, right? Pick up trash around you. Don't litter on the route. Don't start anything violent. Pick up the trash that you see. Come on. I always say if to make change, we got to take out the trash. That includes the trash that's around us. Let's get it and get it out. But make your city more beautiful along the way, right? All right. So have a good one. See ya.